The courtroom didn't laugh quietly. It exploded. Not because something funny was said, but because a little black girl stood up. The judge squinted over his glasses, irritated. The prosecutor smirked. Someone in the gallery whispered, "Is this a joke?" The girl's voice shook, but it didn't break. "I'll defend my dad." That's when the judge waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. "Get that child out of my courtroom." More laughter. Someone clutched their purse tighter. Someone else muttered something cruel under their breath. What no one realized was that the smallest person in that room was about to expose the biggest lie they had ever told. And by the end of the day, the same judge who mocked her would be forced to apologize publicly. She was 14 years old, small for her age, wearing a borrowed blazer that looked too big for her thin shoulders. Her hair was neatly tied back and her shoes were slightly worn at the edges. She looked more like a student giving a school presentation than someone standing in a courtroom. But her eyes were different. They were focused, determined, and full of something much stronger than fear. Behind her sat her father, Marcus Carter, dressed in an orange prison uniform. Heavy chains hung from his wrists and ankles. He looked exhausted, thinner than he used to be, with dark circles under his eyes. Marcus had been a city bus driver for 12 years. He was known as a quiet man who always greeted passengers politely and waited for elderly riders to sit before moving the bus. He had no criminal record, no history of violence, nothing that would make anyone think he could commit a robbery. But 3 months earlier, a small convenience store had been robbed at gunpoint late at night. The robber escaped with a few $100s. The store clerk later picked Marcus out of a police lineup. That single identification changed everything. Police arrested him the next morning in front of his apartment building while neighbors watched from their windows. Maya would never forget the sound of the handcuffs clicking around her, father's wrists, or the way he kept saying, "There must be a mistake." Marcus had insisted he was innocent from the first moment. He said he had been home with Maya that night, helping her prepare for a science exam, but there were no cameras in their hallway, and no one else had seen him. The prosecution argued that Maya's testimony did not count because she was family. Without proof, his words meant nothing. Since his arrest, Maya had visited the jail every week. Each visit was the same. They spoke through a thick glass window using a telephone receiver that crackled with static. Marcus always tried to smile, but it never reached his eyes. "Baby girl, I didn't do this," he would say softly. And Maya would answer, "I know, Dad." But after each visit, she would go home feeling helpless and angry. Their public defender was kind but overwhelmed. She handled dozens of cases at once and often looked exhausted. When Maya asked if there was anything more they could do, the lawyer would give a sad smile and say, "I'm trying." Maya believed her. But she also understood that trying might not be enough to save her father. So Maya decided to try herself. She began spending every afternoon at the public library. At first, she didn't even know what to search for. She typed simple questions into the computer. How do trials work? What evidence proves innocence? Can a child speak in court? Slowly, she started to understand the legal system. She read books about criminal law even when the language was difficult. She watched recordings of real court cases online. She filled notebooks with careful handwriting, copying definitions, procedures, and examples. Weeks passed, and her research turned into something more focused. She began studying the details of her father's case. She requested public records, police reports, and witness statements. Many of the documents were confusing, but she refused to give up. Every night she spread papers across the kitchen table and highlighted important parts with a borrowed marker. One evening she noticed something strange. Her father's work schedule showed he was assigned to a bus route the night of the robbery. But according to the police report, the robbery happened at a time when the bus should have been operating. If he was driving, he couldn't have been at the store, unless the bus had stopped running. The next day, Maya took 2 buses across the city to visit the transit depot, where her father worked. At first, the staff refused to talk to her. But when she explained that her father had been arrested, and she just wanted information, one older mechanic softened. He checked a computer and frowned. "Bus 218? He said. "Yeah, that one broke down that night. Transmission problem. Never left the depot." Maya's heart pounded. "Is there a record?" she asked. "Of course," the mechanic replied. He printed a maintenance log and handed it to her. The document showed the exact date and time, The bus had been reported unusable hours before the robbery took place. That meant Marcus never drove the route at all. Maya thanked him over and over, clutching the paper as if it might disappear. But she wasn't done. She asked if there were security cameras in the depot. There were. After several requests and explanations, she was allowed to view the footage with a supervisor present. The video clearly showed Marcus arriving for work, speaking with mechanics, and leaving the depot on foot when he learned the bus was out of service. The timestamp proved he had been there at the same time the robbery occurred miles away. It was the proof she needed. Now standing in court, Maya held that evidence in her hands. When the judge asked what evidence she had, she stepped forward carefully and handed the folder to the bailiff, who passed it to the bench. The courtroom grew quiet as the judge examined the documents. His expression slowly changed from irritation to surprise. "These appear to be official transit records," he said. "Yes, Your Honor," Maya replied. "My dad couldn't have been at the store because his bus never left the depot." The prosecutor stood abruptly. "We haven't verified these documents," he argued. "They could be incomplete." Maya spoke again, voice stronger now. "There's also security footage from the depot. It shows my dad there at the same time as the robbery." A murmur spread through the courtroom. The judge turned to the prosecutor. "Were you aware of this?" The prosecutor hesitated. "No, Your Honor." The public defender looked stunned. She flipped through the copies Maya had given her, eyes widening. "Your Honor, this appears to be legitimate alibi evidence. We request a recess to verify." The judge nodded slowly. "Granted." Court was paused while officials confirmed the records with the transit authority. The waiting felt endless. Maya sat silently, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her father watched her with a mixture of pride and disbelief, tears forming in his eyes. After nearly an hour, the judge returned. His expression was serious. "The court has confirmed that the defendant's assigned vehicle was indeed out of service," he announced. "Security footage places Mr. Carter at the transit depot during the time of the robbery." Gasps filled the room. The prosecutor's confidence vanished. He shuffled papers nervously, unable to meet Marcus's eyes. "In light of this new evidence," the judge continued, "the charges against Marcus Carter are dismissed." For a moment, no one moved. Then the reality sank in. Marcus lowered his head and began to cry, not quietly, but with deep, uncontrollable sobs. The chains were removed from his wrists, clattering loudly as they fell away. He stood, unsteady at first, then turned toward his daughter. Maya ran to him, and he wrapped his arms around her as tightly as he could. "You saved me," he whispered. "You really saved me." Tears streamed down her face, too, but she was smiling. "I told you I would." The courtroom that had laughed at her earlier was now completely silent. Then the judge cleared his throat. His voice sounded different, softer, almost humbled. "Young lady," he said, "this court owes you an apology." He paused before continuing. "Your determination and courage brought the truth to light. You have shown remarkable strength." Maya nodded politely, still holding her father's hand. As they walked out of the courtroom together, sunlight poured through the tall windows of the hallway. Reporters waited outside, cameras flashing, voices calling out questions. But Marcus and Maya ignored them. For the first time in months, they were simply father and daughter walking side by side, free. That night, they sat at their small kitchen table eating takeout food, something they hadn't been able to afford during the long weeks of legal trouble. The apartment felt warmer, lighter, as if a heavy shadow had finally lifted. Marcus looked at his daughter with quiet amazement. "Where did you learn to do all that?" he asked. Maya shrugged shyly. "The library." He laughed, shaking his head. "Your mom would be so proud." Maya looked down at her plate, blinking back tears. "I just didn't want to lose you, too." Marcus reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You won't," he said softly. "Not ever." Outside, the city moved on as usual, unaware of the battle that had been fought and won inside a single courtroom. But for Maya and her father, everything had changed. The little girl they mocked had become the reason justice finally showed up.